Woe unto the wicked, disaster is upon them. My people, youths oppress my people, women rule over them. My people, your guides lead you astray. They stray you from the path. Now this is from Isaiah 3, I believe around Isaiah 3:12, these verses, and I believe this verse is ideal for the next movie that I'm going to talk about for my post-millennial movies about sex, episode 10. And the name of the movie is A Clockwork Orange. And it is my 10th video, 10 standing for Diaz, Dec, DC, or Diaz, yes. So it also means X in Latin or Roman numeral. So X stands for 10, which is 1 and 0, the male principle and the feminine principle in unison. So X, same thing, stands for the human being, the illuminated man, the man who's in balance with his feminine nature, and so forth. So the reason I mention that is because this movie, A Clockwork Orange, is about a guy, ALeX, Al, D. It's like a Arabic word for the, I think, like Al Qaeda, Al blah 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 blah. So Al Jazeera and so forth. Now ALeX, right? ALeX. So he's the X. He's the illuminated man, and we follow his story. Now that's the same thing as the process of red pilling, because Morpheus, who gives the red pill, he's changing Neo from a blue pill simp in modern parlance to a Mac Daddy or whatever, right? To a Superman, basically, Neo Anderson, the new man, the new son of man, the son of God, and the son of man. So ALeX represents the red pill guy, right? The one who has put on the glasses, and he has reached such an advanced level that he doesn't even need those day-live sunglasses. He has contacts now. So that's what he represents. Okay, so there's a few evidence that I'm going to provide, but before I go into that, I want to talk about like some overall themes and some ideas that you want to be aware of before we get into this movie and talking about the details. Now if you ever like studied human society and civilization, you'll know that Civilization, and 1984 is one of the best books that talks about these things. Civilization is based upon inequality. It's based upon an oppressed class and classes who enjoy the fruits of their labor, of the oppressed class. So, like in 1984, they talk about how the majority of the population of Oceania is considered Proles. So 87% of the population are considered Proles, or just commoners, people who just live day to day and are not very intellectual. They just like to work hard and live a simple life, right? So that's the masses of the population, according to 1984, and other books too. I mean, the similar thing is echoed in the song Wu-Tang Revolution, I believe, or the Wu Revolution. It was the first song in the album Wu-Tang Forever, the 2-album CD. So the Wu Revolution, in that also they talk about these different categories of human society. So that's the pros. Then in 1984 they talked about the inner party. This is the helper class. These are about, I don't know, like 4% or something, maybe 7%. But these are basically the helpers to the inner party, who are the masters of the society. So the inner party represents about 2 or 3% of the population, maybe 4%, and double of that is the outer party, the helper class, and or the drone bees. The inner party is like the queen bee. Then there are the drone bees, and then there's the I don't know, the honey, I guess, or the honeycomb itself. The rest of the people who are exploited, basically. Uh, so. So, like in that song "Wu Revolution," he says that sure there's the oppressor class, and then he didn't talk so much about the helpers. He just categorized them as a oppressor class, and then there's the animal-like masses of the people, also called the dead. The Bible talks about the dead. Let the dead bury the dead. And then there's the other class of the slave master, right? And then there's animal like slaves, and then there's the poor righteous teachers of the righteous teachers of the poor, and that's the third class. Now in 1984, they're considered to be what was it, Goldstein and the thought criminals, the rebel party, the Brotherhood. They were called the Brotherhood. Another little mockery right there. But they were called the Brotherhood, and their numbers are unknown, right? Just like today. So, just like in the Bible, it says, you don't know where I'm coming from, you don't know where I'm going, but I am, So that's like the oddball factor. And that's what I believe ALeX represents in this movie, the oddball factor, because we see the ruling class, we see his peers, we mostly see the middle class people, and we see the ruling class people, and we see some commoners too, and we see ALeX, right, in this movie. And another thing I want to talk about is like the difference between civilization and the natural world, right? It was in a book when I was a little kid that I heard about this thing that we are living in an artificial system. And in that book, he quoted Huxley. I didn't know who Huxley was back then, but I got that idea back then that this is an artificial system that we are living in. So, one of the foundational books of Western civilization is the Holy Bible. So when you look at the first chapter of the Holy Bible, it is Genesis. The chapter is called Genesis, the book of Genesis. The start of civilization is basically what it is. And when you read the story, it's all laid down there. All the philosophical framework, the universe, what it's made of, it's all written in allegorical philosophical terms. So then they talk about how they made the man Adam, right? And then they made Eve and so forth. And they were in their natural state, right? And they were happy and in paradise, right? And that's what I believe is the tribal society, which has completely been eradicated from Earth over the last 400 years. But that's the tribal state of the human being, which a small portion of humanity lived until quite recently, a small portion, and even larger, older back in time. So in Genesis, we see how then Eve got tempted by Satan. Now, Satan is this psychopathic, deviant personality type, the type that wants to rule over others using their minds and their power, of cunning and trickery. So, like in the world, the artificial system, basically. So Satan corrupted Eve by making her break the rules that God set forth. And then she manipulated Adam because Adam was attached to her. And Adam also fell, right? And then they became slaves, basically. And they fell from grace, right? They were brainwashed. Their minds were changed because slavery only works when the slave is a willing slave, right? So that's the story of civilization, okay? The male and female genders have been manipulated in this process, just like the story of Adam and Eve. It's a continuous process, right? So how are males different from females? I've talked about it in other videos, but basically it's the difference between what Thomas Jefferson says, the fight between freedom and security, the political forces of freedom and security and opposition. He says how those who don't, those who want, those who will give up a little freedom, will give up some freedom for a little security, deserve neither freedom or security. So he's talking about the female and the male mindset. Females prefer security, males want freedom. Now, in a typical tribe, there's there's a certain region that they control, a tribe, hundreds of groups of small families organized around a head priest, leader figure. So there's usually certain areas of land that they control. Now, in the richest part of the land, there'll be water, there'll be vegetation that they can live off of, and so forth. So in this, near this area, the center rich area, there'll be houses, and that's basically where the females will basically have camp out. They'll be basically, that'll be their little community, and that's where they'll raise their kids. That's where they'll gather their berries and vegetables and grubs and so forth, and with the help of the children, of course. And they'll also do all their maternal duties in that process, living amongst other mothers of all ages, and doing their motherly stuff, nurturing their tribe, and taking care of everybody, the children and the men in the tribe. And they are basically in the center of the tribe. Now the men, they're basically scattered all over the tribe. They have little huts and teepees and stuff. They can just camp out wherever, because men are more rugged, they're more individualistic, they're more spirited, they like to explore and stuff. They like to guard, they like to protect. So they're basically guarding the periphery, and in the process they also go out on hunts together and also have battles with other tribesmen and so forth. So basically that's what the symbol for male is, right? Going out. Whereas the female is the cross, right? She's centered right in the middle. She's, right there in the center. She's, that's where she is residing, right? That's her cross. Whereas the man is trying to go out and in the periphery. So this will be important when I talk about the natural wild man versus the domesticated man. Okay, so now you understand that we're living in a civilization, not in the natural tribal state, and therefore we are at the mercy of Satan, who has gotten us into this mess and maintains us in this mess through the manipulation of our human nature and our relations with each other and with the world around us. And we have also talked about what tribal society looks like for males and females. And we've talked about the symbology and the groups of human. Just like in the Bible, there's the illuminated man, right? There's Jesus and the anointed one, the Christ, the Messiah. And then there's his helpers or his apostles, right? Just like he has his droogs here. But he actually ends up being a droog in the end, but I'll talk about that, or an apostle in the end. And then there's the Satan or the evil psychopathic personality types who are spiritually from the dark side. Then they have their helpers, which are corrupt humans who have sold their souls, basically. The people who work for the system and earn much more than they should earn for what they do. And then there's the bulk of the population who are unconscious, pretty much. They live in a fairy tale reality, basically. And so the war is basically against the wild men, or the evil versus good, basically, right? The two sides. People who want to live in the natural system of tribal society, or people who want to live in this progress, the civilizational progress of ever-expanding technology and ever-expanding control over the masses, and subjugation of the masses in a more efficient, scientific manner now. So the scientific socialism, this futuristic society, is basically perfectly depicted in this movie. Um, what is this now? A Clockwork Orange. I'm actually looking for my water. I'll have to be right back, actually. Let me go get some water. So yeah, that's what this movie is about. You see the cover of the movie. You see ALeX in the cover of the movie. And you see he's carrying an ice pick and looking in a very sinister manner towards you. But one interesting thing is that you see that there's only one eye showing in the picture. So you see him like this, looking at you with one eye. And that's another code right there. That means like in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, So he is the one-eyed man, just like the skull with the pirate symbol. Actually, I think I'll have to do the part 2 to this. So this is just an introduction, and then I'm going to continue talking about the movie in the next video.